I want you to understand something before I tell you this story. I am not a hero. I am not a soldier, or a scientist, or a diplomat. My name is Kale Morrow, and I fix heating systems on frozen planets. That is all I have ever been. A man with steady hands and a warm jacket, standing at the edge of nowhere, keeping pipes from freezing. Civith Force is the kind of world that makes you forget the sun exists. During storm season, the blizzards last for weeks. The temperature drops so low that the readings on my console stop making sense. The research station holds 9 people during those months, and we live like ghosts, passing each other in hallways that hum with recycled air. I had been there for 14 months when it happened. 14 months of ice and silence, and the same 4 walls. It was the middle of the deepest storm cycle when the perimeter alarm triggered. Not a breach. A thermal anomaly. Something outside, 200 meters from the station wall, was burning hot against the frozen ground. I pulled up the sensor feed and adjusted the filters through the static. I saw a shape, enormous, curved, scaled, glowing faint amber against the white. My hands stopped moving. I knew what I was looking at, even though no human had ever seen one this close. Every species in the galaxy knew what a Vithorak looked like. They were the oldest living beings in the universe. Older than every civilization, every empire, every language that had ever been spoken among the stars. The galaxy called them dragons, because no other word came close. There were fewer than 40 left alive, and one of them was dying in the snow outside my station. By the time I suited up and pushed through the outer airlock, she was already gone. The adult Vithorak lay on her side in the snowfield, half buried, her massive body still radiating heat that melted the ice around her in a perfect circle. Her scales were dark gold, cracked along the edges, dull where they should have been bright. She must have been ancient. She must have flown across systems to reach this frozen nowhere, and I will never know why. But her wing was raised, frozen in place, lifted like a small tent above the snow, and beneath it, something moved. I heard a sound, not a roar, nothing like the stories. It was small and broken, like glass scraping against glass, like a kitten crying through a closed door. I knelt down. The snow came up to my chest. I pushed my hands through it and felt warmth, faint and fading, and then I saw it. A hatchling, no bigger than a house cat. Its scales were gray, colorless, not the molten gold of its mother. Its eyes were sealed shut. One of its wing membranes was crumpled and wrong, folded against its body at an angle that told me it would never open properly. It was shaking so hard that its tiny claws left scratches in the ice beneath it. It was crawling, slowly, desperately, toward the only heat source left in its world. It crawled into my arms. I did not think about the law. I did not think about the Galactic Council, or the non-interference statutes, or what would happen to me. I thought about how small it was. I thought about how it was shaking. I thought about how it pressed its face against my chest, against the place where my heart was beating, and went still. I wrapped it in my thermal jacket and carried it inside. Dr. Surael found me in the medbay 20 minutes later. She is Quori, which means she is tall, insectoid, and more logical than anyone I have ever met. She is also, in her quiet way, my friend. She stood in the doorway and looked at the thing in my arms, and I watched every color drain from her face. She told me what I already knew, that I was holding one of the last Vithorak ever born, that the law was absolute. Non-interference with the Vithorak was the most sacred statute in galactic civilization. Every species had agreed. You do not touch them. You do not help them. You do not intervene with their dying. To do so was considered the gravest act of disrespect the galaxy could imagine. She told me I was required, by every law that governed the stars, to carry it back outside and leave it in the snow. I looked down at the hatchling. It had wrapped its tail around my wrist. Its breathing had steadied. Against my heartbeat, it had stopped shaking for the first time. I said no. Surael told me the consequences: imprisonment, exile. Earth could lose its seat on the council. Humanity was already considered unstable, emotional, irrational. This would confirm everything the other species believed about us. I asked her one question. If I put it back out there, will it live? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said no. Then I am not putting it back. I did not know how to care for a Vithorak infant. No one did. There were no records, No guides, no research. The Vitharak had never allowed anyone close enough to study their young. So I did what humans have always done when faced with something small and dying. I guessed. I improvised. I held on. I discovered that the hatchling did not respond to heat lamps or warming pads. It responded to contact. It needed to feel something alive against its body. So I built a sling out of maintenance straps and carried it against my chest, under my shirt, where it could feel my skin and my heartbeat. I found that it would drink water mixed with trace minerals I scraped from the geological samples in storage. I learned that when it slept, it made a low humming sound that I could feel in my ribs. When it was scared, it gripped harder. When I spoke to it, it tilted its head and pressed closer. I started calling it Ember. There is something that happens when you hold a fragile thing long enough. It changes you. It rewires something deep in your chest that you did not know was disconnected. I had not held anything alive like that in years, not since my daughter was born on a colony I cannot go back to. I do not talk about that much. I do not need to. You understand, or you do not. Commander Othik arrived on the second day. Toran military, tall and gray-skinned, with a voice like stone settling. He was not cruel. That is important to say. He believed, with his whole being, that leaving the Vitharak alone was the right thing to do, that their species had chosen to fade with dignity, and that forcing survival on them was an act of control, not kindness. He gave me 12 hours to surrender the hatchling before a council enforcement team arrived. I held Ember and said nothing. She hummed against my chest. I said nothing, and I did not move. They came on the third day, 4 Turan soldiers and a council adjudicator, a Marethis named Valeth. She was tall, silver-skinned, and calm in a way that made the air around her feel thin. This was not a raid. It was a legal proceeding. They were civilized about it. Valeth addressed me with genuine patience. She explained the philosophy. The Vitharak were dying as a species. They knew it. They had accepted it. To force their young to survive, to interfere with the natural ending of the oldest civilization in the universe, was an act of arrogance. Every other species had learned this. Every other species understood that maturity meant knowing when to let go. She looked at me holding Ember and asked, with what I believe was real curiosity, "Why can you not?" I did not give a speech. I am not that kind of man. I spoke quietly, because Ember was sleeping, and I did not want to wake her. I told them about a dog I found when I was 12. It was winter on my colony, and the dog had fallen into a frozen irrigation canal. It was a stray. Nobody owned it. Nobody wanted it. I climbed down and pulled it out, and it bit me so hard I still have the scar. My father told me I was stupid for bleeding over something that was not mine. That dog lived another 9 years. It slept at the foot of my bed every single night. I told them that humans are the way we are, not because we do not understand death. We understand it perfectly. We understand it better than most species in the galaxy, because we live such short lives that we see it everywhere, in everything, all the time. We just refuse to agree with it, not because we are arrogant, because we are stubborn, because something in us, something old and deep and irrational, looks at a small thing dying in the cold and says no, not today, not while I am here. I looked at Valeth and said, "You see a dying species exercising its right to disappear. I see a baby that was cold and scared and crawled toward the only heartbeat it could find. I do not care what your laws say. I do not care what its species decided. She came to me, and I am not the kind of creature that puts her back in the snow." The room was quiet for a long time. Then Suriel stepped forward. She had been standing in the doorway, watching. She said she was filing a formal scientific objection. The hatchling's behavior, she argued, constituted a choice. It had sought human warmth. It had bonded. It had responded to voice and touch. Vitharak sovereignty must extend to individual members, including infants who choose to live. It was a thin argument. Everyone in the room knew it. But it was enough to pause the proceeding for 3 days while the council deliberated. During those 3 days, I did not leave the med bay. I slept sitting up with Ember on my chest. I talked to her. I told her about Earth, about rain, about oceans, about what grass smells like after a storm. She could not understand me. She did not need to. She listened to the sound of my voice the way all small things listen, not for meaning, but for presence. On the second day, Suralel noticed something. Ember's scales were changing. Faint lines of gold were spreading beneath the gray, pulsing slowly, rhythmically, in time with my heartbeat. Sorrel ran every scan she had. What she found changed everything. Ember's body temperature was rising, not from the heat lamps, not from the station's systems, from me. The hatchling was drawing thermal energy directly from human contact and converting it, the way adult Vytherak converts starlight into plasma fire. But no Vytherak had ever done this with a living being's warmth before. It was unprecedented. The hatchling had adapted. She had adapted because a human held her. The council's ruling arrived on the third evening. It was not a pardon. It was not an acquittal. It was something the galaxy had never needed before. Something so strange that they had to create new language just to describe it. The Vytherak elder who had declared the hatchling unviable sent a message. A single sentence. The first words a Vytherak had ever directed at a human in recorded history. The small one chose. We do not undo a choosing. I was permitted to stay with her. No legal framework existed for what I was. I was not a parent, not a guardian, not an owner. The council created a new term in their records, borrowed from old Vytherak language. It translates roughly as, the warmth that was answered. That was 7 months ago. Ember is the size of a large dog now. Her scales are bright gold, and they glow when she sleeps. Her right wing is still crooked, still wrong. But Sorrel built a lightweight prosthetic membrane that clicks into place along her shoulder ridge. She flies in short, clumsy bursts around the station hangar, always circling, always coming back to me. Other species visit now, not to study Ember, to watch me. They stand at a distance and observe a human scratching a dragon behind the jaw, or falling asleep in a chair while she curls around his shoulders. They do not understand it. A Tehran ambassador asked Sorrel last week what I was doing. She said, he is doing what humans do. He found something broken, and he refused to look away. The galaxy is full of species that learn to let go. Species that evolved past attachment, past the need to hold on, past the irrational pull of something small and warm and alive. They consider it maturity. They consider it wisdom. Humans never learned that lesson. Ember is asleep in my lap right now. She is glowing faintly, gold light pulsing in time with my heart, and her tail is wrapped around my wrist, the same way it was on the first night, when she was dying in the snow, and I was the only warm thing left in the world. She crawled to me through the worst storm on the coldest planet in Council space. She was dying, and she chose my heartbeat over silence. Every species in the galaxy would have respected her death. I am human. I respected her choice to live. I think that terrifies them. Good.